It's called a Drey. Go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. So what? What? What do I want to do? What do I want to do? So. Yeah. Sucks. Sucks. What's up, YouTube? Right.
Sucks. I rate.
Trinity. Yeah. Concerns. Times. too bad. Yo, yo, This man, a prince. It's a prince going to you. See,
Please don't score. No, I need to right here. I need to right here.
okay, yeah.
Sit in the back.
Like Jamaican, I don't know, Jamaican. Yo! No, wait, just excited, so like, yeah. Yo! Miss my sister still. Just okay, I'm gonna be upset with that dog. Go easy, so I'm really. Build up my status, build up my fan base and my people. I love my people, you know. I love my fans and I love my fans. I am in my mustache. My mustache like mine. Bob Builder. Speed. That friendly on everybody, you know. Yeah. I was in my boxes, me. In my boxes, I easy dog. Video those are easy. So I'm a caddy. So I'm a caddy. What you like? Oh, but I can go on. Oh, but I can go on already. That's why. That's why. I try to show you. That's the thing now. That is it now. That's the next thing. Like, right. You're like, shoot. Like that. So just like that. J-line. What you like? Oh, man! Oh! Oh, bro! Bro! What you like, dog? Yo! That bull champ. That bull. Playing that my watch. That them I think. Playing everybody. Them stressful. Nothing stress out myself. Nothing stress me out. Nothing like that stress me out. That's them thing there. Exciting thing. So you got my YouTube, you know.
Hey, bro, I just landed.
It's like freestyle and big up the people.
I just landed. What did you expect, bro?
Zoom in. Elon Musk. Elon Musk. Yeah. Billion. Billion more.
Damn, tell you that a police escort here.
Father Jesus, yo, Drey, you like that? No, Drey, what? Yo, search it.
Whatever. Until we run out of light. Last country in Greenland. Don't worry. It's just football. Talks, I think. I ain't screaming about it. It makes me want to rob him. Yeah, it's 6 and shit stuff. Stay so that's good. It's 5 now.
No one airline. No, this guy's not.
China takes his should cut off at 6.
Yeah, I want to start. Direct. Yo! Yo!
This video was made possible by Skillshare. Learn new skills that you can use at home, work, or school with a free trial of Skillshare Premium at the link in the description. Normal times in business are like a road. For the most part, competitors are all heading in the same direction, and while some might turn away and try a different path, for the most part, the only way to get ahead is through brute force, to slowly catch up and take the lead. That is difficult. Abnormal times in business, though, when an industry is in crisis, are like a fork in the road. The competitors all reach in together and are forced to pick a path. This levels the playing field. While the big players have the resources to evaluate the different paths and might have experience from times when this has happened before, all companies, big and small, must pick a path. And at the end of the day, only one is going to work best.
It's like
Crisis
Airbnb.
it stress tests the big
I would know everything on the game, yo! Yo!
and gives smaller players the opportunity to make
Bank account
choices
right
that could put them ahead. This is what's happening in the airline industry right now. It's one of the clusters of companies that, as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, had to almost entirely shut down and is now in the process of turning back on and reinventing itself to capture a new set of consumers with new needs and wants. Industry turmoil is there's a case to be made.
Yo!
Shuffling of the rank
The
and
dreams
file
are for
of the
big.
industry.
When I read the
There's a case
PhD,
to
you
be
know,
made that right
the
now,
dreams
for
are
the
for
first
big.
time
It
in a
can't
long
smile.
time, there's real opportunity
So
for
it
something
can
new.
tell and keep on
There's
moving
opportunity
forward.
airline entrepreneurship.
Respect for that little thought, that's go big. Yo.
If you were tasked with starting an accounting business, or a coffee shop, or a landscaping business, you probably know roughly what you needed to do to start. You need to get a license, or retail space, or some lawnmowers. And with enough initiative and a little bit of luck, you probably even have a real shot at successfully starting your business. Meanwhile, if you were tasked with starting
Can't do that,
an
can't
airline,
probably.
you and I both know that no matter your luck or initiative, you'd have almost no shot of ever taking off. Due to its complexity and capital intensity, successful airline entrepreneurship is one of the most difficult endeavors in business. But it is something that, occasionally, real people actually do. So what does it take?
My
What
opinion,
is
man,
step
I work
one
it still.
of forming a new airline?
What a whole heap of money, dog. You know, oh man, I get this.
Now, everything for startup airlines nowadays builds off what makes them unique, and new airlines have to be unique. You see, fundamentally, for a new company to succeed, they need to do something better than their competitors. They need to be cheaper, faster, more convenient, or just do something that others do not. If they don't, then why would customers choose to switch to them? The competitive advantage of major airlines is that they are major. Is that you can get on one of their planes on one side of the world and, after a few connections, get off on the other. The problem is that almost all of the major full-service network carriers, as those in the industry will call them, were formed in the early days of commercial aviation and grew as the industry did. Today, it would just be effectively impossible for an airline to launch with enough scale to compete directly with United, British Airways, or Singapore Airlines, and if they didn't, the legacy airlines would crush them faster than they could get to the necessary scale for their competitive advantage to compete their size. Of the 10 largest airlines in the US, none were founded in the current century, and in Europe, only one was, Wizz Air, which nobody would consider a full-service network carrier.
What? Yo!
One of the only
Yo!
examples of a full-service network carrier established within the past few decades without government support is Virgin Australia, and in their case, it was almost by accident. The collapse of Ansett Australia, which was the country's only major full-service network carrier at the time, left a massive void in Australia's aviation market only a year into Virgin Australia's operations, which gave the company the opportunity to grow quite quickly and effectively. However, even this example gives further credence to the theory that it's nearly impossible for a new major full-service network carrier to emerge in the 21st century, as Virgin Australia entered administration in 2020 and is now exiting as a smaller, primarily domestic airline, ceding the international market to its legacy competitor, Qantas. So, once again, new airlines need a strong, defined, and unique business model to succeed. Looking at three of the most promising startup airlines planned to launch in 2021, a strong, defined, and unique business model is exactly what each of them has. Flypop, for example, is planning to launch long-haul low-cost flights from the UK to secondary cities in India without existing non-stop service, such as Amritsar and Ahmedabad, in order to cater to the Indian diaspora living in the UK. Meanwhile, Play Airlines is looking to reprise the business model of now-defunct WOW Air, and was even founded by former WOW executives by focusing on facilitating low-cost transatlantic travel with connecting itineraries through Iceland. Then, in what is likely the most promising airline startup of 2021, as its founder previously launched WestJet, Azul Airways, and JetBlue, Breeze Airways is looking to launch what they refer to as hub-busting flights on underserved routes in the U.S., meaning they're identifying routes without existing nonstop service, such as Tulsa to New York or Louisville to Los Angeles, and capturing demand by setting up nonstop service. Crucially, each of these three business models do not involve directly competing with full-service network carriers. Budget airlines like Play Airlines and Flypop tend to expand the pie by offering prices that stimulate demand from a lower market segment that likely would not regularly fly on a full-service network carrier, while Breeze Airways will likely directly compete with Southwest, as it's the primary incumbent airline that might offer non-stop hub-busting flights. In the selection of a business model, not competing against the world's largest airlines is a good choice, because full-service network carriers have the time and money to start and win a price war, while startup airlines do not. That's because it's very difficult for startup airlines to get funding. There just isn't the appetite for it because the airline industry has very little upside for investors. It goes through massive, dramatic cycles of profit and loss depending on oil prices and external economic conditions, but even in the best of times, it makes a very thin profit. Over the past 25 years, even before the coronavirus pandemic, the industry has hovered around a 4 to 5% operating margin. Investors could just as easily put their money into something more secure, like the railroad industry, which hovers between a 25 and 30% operating margin. In fact, that's exactly what investor Warren Buffett has done. He's famously shirked significant investments in airlines while taking massive, successful bets on the American railroad industry. For this reason, many startup airlines fail before launch simply because they cannot secure funding, or after launch because they didn't secure enough funding to reach critical mass. For those three most promising startup airlines of 2021, though, they each have seemingly found enough money to launch. Play Airlines secured a $42 million investment from Avianta Capital, which is an Irish investment fund run by Aslan Whitley Ryan, a member of an influential aviation family which includes the founders of Ryanair. Meanwhile, Flypop's exact investor makeup is less clear, but their largest source of funding is coming from a UK government fund intended to kickstart innovative businesses whose launch was affected by COVID. Finally, Breeze took the most traditional funding path, having raised $83.3 million through the venture capital industry, but that was likely only possible due to its founders' remarkably consistent track record of successful airline startups. The only consistency with startup airline funding is inconsistency. Unlike other industries, where there is often a defined ecosystem of investors willing and sometimes competing to fund startups with a strong business model, plan, executive team, and proof of concept, you just don't have that with airlines. The tiny number of new entrants, plus the general lack of appetite from investors, means that finding funding to complete the extraordinarily expensive tasks required to set up an airline is itself the task that prevents most from reaching takeoff. One of those extraordinarily expensive tasks involves quite simply gaining the legal right to operate an airline. Every national aviation authority issues what are typically called air operator certificates, which allows a company to use their aircraft for commercial purposes. In the US, there are essentially two choices of certificate type for scheduled airlines. The first and simpler one is a Part 135 certificate, referring to the section of the US's federal aviation regulations that outline this certificate's operating requirements. Now, a Part 135 certificate is primarily used for cargo and passenger charter operations, which often includes private jet operations, but it can also be used for certain scheduled operations. Specifically, this certificate only allows the use of aircraft with 9 passenger seats or fewer on scheduled operations, with a few exceptions. One of the largest Part 135 scheduled airlines in the US, for example, is Cape Air, which operates a fleet of 94 9-seat aircraft to primarily small government-subsidized destinations around the US and Caribbean. Because they are on a Part 135 certificate, they can do things like operate flights with a single pilot, even though in practice most of their flights operate with 2 pilots, whereas a Part 121 certificate holder, like United Airlines, for example, would need 2 pilots even to operate the exact same aircraft on the exact same route. In general, the regulations for Part 135 operations are slightly less stringent, and that also means that attaining this license is a lot easier. Costs apparently average between $35,000 and $95,000 in legal fees, plus an additional $50,000 in expenses to attain a Part 135 certificate. Meanwhile, getting a
Getting an the more water does I run out of my mouth.
Getting a Part 121 air operator certificate is much, much more difficult. These are the certificates held by United, American Airlines, Delta, and any other large commercial airline in the US, and the process to attain one is so complicated that it's essentially impossible without hiring a third-party consultancy to assist. This, in and of itself, is such a niche process that there are only 6 FAA-endorsed Part 121 certification consultancies in existence. After all, there are only 104 active Part 121 airlines in the US, so a new certification is a fairly rare occurrence. While none of the FAA-endorsed certification consultancies publicize prices, a non-endorsed competitor lists their consulting fee as $1.2 million, which includes things like creating an operations manual, training management, setting up electronic flight bags, establishing a drug and alcohol testing program, and almost everything else needed prior to application, plus the management of the process of actually applying itself. In general, the reason this application process is so strenuous is because a startup airline must set up the internal infrastructure for all the extensive safety programs needed to pass the FAA's review, and then it must present a massive packet of documents proving that it has done all these things. Given the complexity of this process, some airlines decide to purchase, rather than apply for, an air operator certificate. This is what Breeze Airways initially planned to do. In July, they applied for the U.S. Department of Transportation to transfer the certificate of now-defunct Compass Airlines to them, but they eventually dropped this plan due to pushback from other airlines and Compass's pilots union. Now, Breeze is going through the process of applying for its own air operator certificate, but it goes to show that buying an existing one is a very real possibility, and it's something that happens fairly frequently with Part 135 certificates. In fact, there are even websites listing small Part 135 airlines for sale, which can be bought specifically for their certificates. Around the world, while each country's exact process is different, certification is quite often a major hurdle for a new airline, as each country's air regulator needs to see that the startup is fit to fly before giving them their stamp of approval. Of course, these previous steps of deciding on a business model, finding funding, and attaining an air operator certificate have nothing to do with the most fundamental thing an airline needs to operate: airplanes.
Density is a tool to record your DJ set and master it after. Density connects to DJ decks to record a set, rather than recording audio.
Now, somewhat counterintuitively, acquiring airplanes is actually one of the simpler phases of the airline startup process. The reason why this is because, quite often, airlines don't actually own aircraft themselves. This is part of the reason why Breeze, for example, can launch with only about $90 million in funding, despite the fact that a single one of their planned flagship aircraft, the A220-300, has a list price of about $90 million. million. Rather, a startup airline like Breeze tends to use one of two techniques. The first option is to lease. This works essentially like a car lease, just on a much larger scale. Some 50% of commercial aircraft globally are under lease, and this option is often more popular with smaller airlines. The advantages of leasing aircraft are straightforward. It spreads out the cost without the need to take on debt, and it reduces risk, as lease terms can be shorter than the useful life of an aircraft, and there can be some options to return aircraft before the end of their lease if there's no longer the need. In addition, leasing aircraft allows airlines to get aircraft faster. Aircraft manufacturers often have a multi-year backlog. Airbus, for example, as of December 2020, has a 7,000 aircraft order backlog, meaning an airline ordering an aircraft today wouldn't receive it for many years. Lessors often have aircraft available within months or even weeks, making this the attractive option for startups. Also, particularly nowadays, COVID has made getting an airplane on lease easier. Existing airlines have been downsizing their fleets and getting rid of older, less fuel-efficient aircraft. In the case of American Airlines and Air Canada, that meant retiring 20 and 14, respectively, of their E190 aircraft. It so happens that Breeze is launching with E190 aircraft, and even though they aren't directly leasing the retired aircraft of American and Air Canada, more aircraft of a type in the marketplace pushes prices down. There is, however, another mechanism increasingly used by airlines, especially when they need to get newer aircraft for which there isn't a large second-hand market. Breeze, for example, has an order with Airbus for 60 A220-300 aircraft. Now, this order is directly from Breeze to Airbus, but Breeze themselves could never pay for 60 of these aircraft. Therefore, what they've done is, before they've even taken delivery of the first of these aircraft, sell 5 of them to another company, Voyager Aviation Holdings, which is then going to lease these aircraft back to Breeze. This means Breeze is effectively getting the exact aircraft it wants, when it wants, but functionally they get all the benefits of a lease. It's to be expected that, as the delivery dates of the rest of the airline's A220 fleet near, the airline will enter into more of these lease-back agreements. Of course, this is all a simplistic view of the process of airline entrepreneurship, but business model selection, funding, certification, and aircraft acquisition are the 4 largest hurdles, and improper completion of any one of these is often the source of a startup airline's eventual failure. The rest of the process, from hiring staff, finding office space, crafting a marketing strategy, leasing space at airports, and much, much more, is much less likely to have a dramatic impact on their odds of success. Since the era of the emergence of low-cost airlines, there's been little successful action in airline entrepreneurship. With a business atmosphere primed for disruption, the next few years will prove whether it's still possible for new airlines to succeed, or whether the industry is still locked down by the world's largest airlines. What this video goes to prove is that, even for the world's toughest tasks, like starting an airline, there's someone out there doing it successfully. That's a lot of what the philosophy of Skillshare is based on. They figure that there's nobody better to teach skills than the people who actually use those skills. Their classes, of which there are thousands, are taught by real people who actually know what they're talking about, so it's a great way to learn for anyone who's creative and curious, which I'm sure includes all Wendover viewers. Whether you want to get ahead at work or find a new passion, Skillshare certainly has a class for you. For example, if you want to start out as a YouTuber, you can take the Creative Video Storytelling and Editing, Making the Most of Stock Footage class by Nikki Stevens, which is a lot of what us educational creators do. We can't go to what we're talking about most of the time, and we often can't afford to animate our whole videos, so we rely on using existing stock footage creatively. Skillshare is built to be the best place to learn, meaning there are no ads and they're always launching new classes, so if you have any curiosity at all in gaining a new skill of any type, check them out with a free trial of Skillshare Premium, which is available to the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description, and you'll be helping support this channel while you're at it.
Come sit with us. Come sing with us. Come share with us. Come worship with us. We know it can be intimidating to attend a new church, so we've made it easy.
Last year, for the first time ever, the public got a glimpse into the financials of airline frequent flyer programs. What they saw was truly astonishing. During the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, airlines were hemorrhaging money, and so, naturally, they looked for a loan. United, for example, sought $5 billion to tide the company over until travel came back, but like with any loan, they needed to put up collateral. They needed to offer something to the bank that it would acquire if the company failed to pay the loan back. The problem was, United wasn't worth much at the time, since, of course, it was hemorrhaging money, meaning it would have had to offer a huge chunk of itself as collateral. Rather, they decided to offer one of their subsidiaries as collateral, Mileage Plus Holdings LLC, essentially their loyalty program. Of course, given that United is a publicly traded company, they have various financial reporting requirements, including the obligation to file a Form 8K with the Securities and Exchange Commission whenever a major business event takes place, such as taking out a multi-billion-dollar loan. Of thousands, one line on this document stood out. Quote, multiplying Mileage Plus Holdings' 2019 EBITDA by a factor of 12 equates to a Mileage Plus valuation of approximately $21.9 billion. $21.9 billion. That's the value of United's loyalty program, according to the company and this loan. Similar financial disclosures from Delta and American Airlines peg the value of their loyalty programs at $26 billion and $19.5 to $31.5 billion, respectively. So, notwithstanding their size, why did these numbers turn heads? Well, because of these, the airlines' market caps. These figures equal the total value of all the shares in each company. It's essentially a real-time indicator of what Wall Street considers a company worth, given the ebbs and flows in stock prices. At the time, United's was $10 billion, Delta's $20 billion, and American's $6 billion. So the value of each airline is less than the value of their loyalty programs, which is interesting in and of itself, but the airlines own their loyalty programs. Therefore, at least according to Wall Street, airlines themselves are worthless. In fact, they're more than worthless. They have negative value. They're loss leaders. And the only thing imparting each airline value are the highest demand travel days of the year.
Just I think
While
about more
availability of
doing
pump
my
seats
life.
differed, that meant that someone who
More
did
doing my life. You know YouTube? Just I think about it. More doing your life, you see me? I really know one day I'm going to do some YouTube in the process.
Almost every available seat is likely sold for cash. Even if it all worked out in the end in the airline's favor, they didn't like these losses, so they switched the way redemptions worked too. Now, nearly every major airline has dynamic award charts.
Don't forget to watch, like, and subscribe.
So too do point
And keep it real with me, because you know I really do.
United is charging $114 for non-stop
Alright?
Denver flights
Yo.
on low